The afternoon was cool and quiet when Emily and Ryan drove through the peaceful streets of Maplewood, a suburban neighborhood just outside Chicago. The trees had turned golden, leaves falling gently on the road as the sun lowered behind the rooftops. They were on their way to visit Ethan Ryan's old college friend, someone Emily barely knew but had heard about countless times. Ryan often said Ethan had a good heart but bad timing, a man who never quite fit into the fast pace of corporate life. Emily didn't know why she felt uneasy about the visit. Maybe it was because things between her and Ryan had been distant lately. Their conversations had become short and polite, their laughter rare. It wasn't that they were unhappy, just ... quiet, married for 8 years. They had fallen into a rhythm that felt safe but dull, like living in a house where the lights worked, but the warmth was gone. As Ryan parked outside Ethan's home, a simple but beautiful brick house, Emily adjusted her coat and turned to him. "Are you coming in?" she asked. Ryan checked his phone and sighed. "I have a quick call with the office." "You go ahead, I'll join in a bit." "'Kay," she said softly, opening the car door. The air smelled like pine and rain. She walked up the short path and rang the bell. A moment later, Ethan opened the door, smiling warmly. "Emily, hey, come in." "Ryan didn't want to face me alone, huh?" She laughed lightly. "He's on a call. He'll come in soon." "Typical Ryan," Ethan said, stepping aside. The house was cozy, filled with the scent of coffee and faint jazz music in the background. The light coming through the large windows gave everything a soft, golden hue. "I just made some tea," he said. "Want some?" "Sure," she said, glancing around. The home felt welcoming, a mix of art, old books, and small imperfections that made it real. Ethan handed her a mug and smiled. "So, what do you think of the place?" "It's beautiful," she said. "You've done a great job," Ethan chuckled. "A lot of long nights went into fixing it. This house was a wreck when I bought it." They walked through the living room and into the kitchen as he showed her the renovations. Emily listened as he talked about the work he'd done himself, sanding floors, painting walls, rebuilding the old staircase. There was something easy about his presence. He spoke like someone who didn't need to impress anyone when they reached the back porch. Emily stopped and looked at the small garden outside. It was peaceful rows of flowers, a small bench, and a view of the woods beyond the fence. "This is lovely," she said softly. "Thanks," Ethan said. "It's where I spend most of my evenings. Sometimes I think places can heal us if we let them." His words made her glance at him, curious. There was a sincerity in his tone that felt rare. "You sound like someone who's been through something," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe lost my job a few years back, went through a rough breakup. This house helped me find myself again." Emily nodded, feeling a strange connection to his honesty. She didn't say it aloud, but she understood what it felt like to lose yourself quietly. Her life looked fine from the outside, a nice home, stable marriage, but inside she often felt invisible. They sat for a while, sipping tea and talking about small things. She told him about her work at the library, her love for painting, and how she hadn't picked up a brush in years. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "You should. You have that artist look like someone who sees beauty others miss." She laughed shyly. "It's been too long. I don't even know if I'd remember how." "Then you definitely should," he said, smiling. "Some things never really leave us. They just wait for us to come back." His words lingered in her mind, echoing softly. For a moment, she forgot about time, about Ryan waiting in the car. When she finally looked at her phone, 20 minutes had passed. "I should go," she said, standing up quickly. "Ryan's probably wondering what's taken so long." Ethan nodded, but looked calm. "It was nice talking to you, Emily. You have a quiet energy. It's refreshing." "Thanks," she said, smiling. As she walked to the door, he added, "Tell Ryan to come by next week. I want to show him something in the garage." "Sure," she replied, opening the door. The cool air hit her face again, reminding her how far she'd drifted into that warm little bubble. Ryan was still in the car, scrolling through his phone. When she got in, he asked casually, "How was it?" "It was nice," she said, fastening her seatbelt. "The house looks great." Ryan nodded. He always had good taste. They drove home in silence for a while. Emily looked out the window, her mind replaying pieces of the conversation, the warmth in Ethan's voice. The way he'd said, "Some things never really leave us." She didn't know why, but the words stayed with her long after they reached home that night. As she prepared for bed, Ryan talked about work and deadlines, his words fading into the background. She smiled and nodded, but her thoughts drifted back to Ethan's garden. The stillness of that moment, and the feeling that someone had actually listened, really listened to her when she finally lay down. She looked at the ceiling and thought about the small details of the afternoon, the smell of cinnamon, the way the sunlight hit the kitchen counter, the tone in his voice when he talked about healing. It had all felt simple but powerful. Before she fell asleep, her phone buzzed once. A message lit up the screen. It was from an unknown number. "Ethan, forgot to show you the studio today. Next time." Emily stared at the message for a long second. Her heart gave a quiet, unsteady beat. She didn't reply. She simply placed the phone face down, turned off the lamp, and closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easily that night. Outside, the wind carried the last of the autumn leaves across the street, whispering through the night as if it knew something inside her had quietly begun to change. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual. Ryan was already gone for work, leaving his usual note on the counter, "Meeting at 9. Don't forget dinner with Mom tonight." She smiled faintly. He was predictable, steady, and kind. But lately, that steadiness had turned into distance. The spark that once defined their marriage had become a quiet routine, like living life on autopilot as she made coffee. Her mind drifted to the message from Ethan. "Forgot to show you the studio today. Next time." She had reread it twice before deleting it. Still, his words echoed in her head like an unfinished melody. She told herself it was nothing, just friendly. But a small part of her felt curious. That afternoon, as she sorted books at the library where she worked, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Her heart skipped even before she looked. "Ethan, hope I didn't make you uncomfortable yesterday. I just enjoyed talking with someone who actually listens." Emily stared at the message, unsure how to respond. After a moment, she typed back, "Not at all. It was nice talking to you, too." Within seconds, he replied, "Good, maybe next time I can show you the studio. You'd like it. It's where I paint." Her fingers paused above the keyboard. She hadn't told him how much she used to love painting. The fact that he remembered made something inside her stir. She wrote, "You paint?" "Every day," he replied. "It's how I make sense of things. You should come by. No pressure. Just art, tea, and conversation." She didn't answer after that, but all day she thought about it. That evening, during dinner with Ryan's mother, she tried to stay engaged. Ryan talked about his company's expansion. His mother asked about the library's budget cuts, and Emily nodded politely. But her thoughts kept drifting elsewhere, to Ethan's words, his calm voice, the light in his eyes, when he talked about rebuilding his life back home. Ryan collapsed on the couch with his laptop. "I just need to finish this report," he said, eyes fixed on the screen. Emily smiled softly. "Sure, take your time." Later, as rain began to fall outside, she stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through droplets. For some reason, she opened her phone again. No new messages. Still, she found herself scrolling to the deleted text thread, rereading the last line, "You should come by." She didn't plan to reply. But the next morning, as she drove past Ethan's street on her way to the grocery store, something in her made her slow down. His house stood quietly at the corner, a warm light glowing through the front window. Before she knew it, she had parked outside. She hesitated for a moment, then got out and walked up to the door. Ethan opened it almost immediately, looking pleasantly surprised. "Emily," he said with a small smile. "You came." "I was nearby," she said quickly. "Thought I'd drop by." "Perfect timing," he replied. "I was painting." "Want to see?" Inside, she followed him to the back of the house. The studio was a sunroom filled with canvases, brushes, and the faint scent of oil paint. The walls were lined with half-finished works, some abstract, some soft and nostalgic. "They're beautiful," she said softly. touching the edge of a canvas that showed a quiet lake at sunset. "Thanks," he said. "That one's from a place I used to visit when life got too loud." She smiled faintly. "It feels peaceful." Ethan turned to her, studying her expression. "You still haven't picked up painting again, have you?" She shook her head. "I tell myself I'm too busy. Truth is, I'm scared it won't feel the same." He handed her a small brush and nodded toward an empty canvas. "Then find out." She hesitated, then laughed softly. "I don't even know where to start." "Anywhere," he said. "That's the beauty of it." So she dipped the brush into a soft blue and began to move it across the blank space. Her strokes were unsure at first, but slowly they found rhythm. Time blurred. For the first time in years, she felt a quiet joy spreading through her chest when she finally looked up. Ethan was watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but as if he saw something she had forgotten existed. "You look alive when you paint," he said quietly. Emily smiled, lowering the brush. "Maybe I've just been asleep for too long." He didn't answer, but the silence between them felt full, not awkward, but charged with something unspoken. She checked her phone and realized an hour had passed. "I should go," she said softly. "Ryan will be home soon." Ethan nodded. "Thank you for coming, and for painting again." As she turned to leave, he added, "You can come back any time. My studio could use your energy." That evening, as Emily drove home, she felt both light and unsettled. When she walked in, Ryan looked up from the couch. "Where were you?" "Grocery store?" she said quickly. "It was packed." He nodded, not questioning her. "You missed a call from Mom. She wants us over for lunch this weekend." "'Kay," she replied, forcing a smile. But inside her thoughts were tangled. That night, while brushing her hair in front of the mirror, she caught her reflection and paused. Her face looked softer somehow, the same yet different. There was color in her cheeks, quiet glow she hadn't noticed in years. When she lay down beside Ryan, he was already asleep. She watched him for a while, the man she had once loved so deeply, the one who had promised her forever. She still cared for him, but something was missing, something she couldn't name. Her phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. "Ethan, it's the blue you used today. It reminded me of morning skies. Hope you paint again soon." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she smiled gently, set the phone down, and turned off the light. But her heart didn't settle easily. For the first time in years, Emily felt like her world had started to shift. Not in chaos, but in quiet, unpredictable ways. And as she drifted toward sleep, she knew deep down that what was happening was more than a simple friendship. It was something unspoken, a connection that had begun to awaken everything she thought she'd lost. The following week passed quietly, but something in Emily had changed. She smiled more at work, spoke with warmth she hadn't felt in years, and even started sketching again in the evenings. Ryan noticed it one night as they were having dinner. "You seem happier lately," he said, looking at her curiously. Emily hesitated before replying. "I've just been trying to find small things that make me feel alive again." "That's good," he said, with a distracted nod, returning to his emails. His company had been preparing for a big project launch, and his focus was everywhere but home. Emily tried not to take it personally. For years, she had been patient, supportive, the quiet anchor in his storm of deadlines. But now, for the first time, she wanted something for herself, too, a sense of purpose, a feeling that she still mattered beyond her roles as wife, daughter-in-law, and librarian. 2 days later, Ethan texted again, working on a new piece. "Thought you might like to see it?" No pressure. Emily stared at the message, debating. Then she replied simply, "I can stop by for a bit tomorrow." When she told Ryan she'd be meeting a friend after work, he didn't question it. "Sure," he said, eyes on his laptop. "I'll wait in the car. We can grab dinner after." The next day, Emily dressed in a soft cream sweater and jeans. Nothing special, but she caught herself checking the mirror twice before leaving. She met Ryan outside his office, and as they drove through the city, he mentioned that Ethan lived nearby. I haven't seen him in months, Ryan said casually. You'll like him. He's an easy guy to talk to. Emily's heart skipped. So Ryan didn't know that she'd already met Ethan, that they had spent hours in that art-filled room. She forced a calm smile. You mentioned he paints, right? Yeah, Ryan said. He's been through some rough stuff. Divorce, business failure, all that. But he's rebuilding. Good for him. When they reached Ethan's house, Ryan pulled into the driveway. I'll wait in the car, he said. Tell him I said hi. Emily nodded, gripping her purse as she stepped out. The autumn air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and fallen leaves. As she approached the door, her heart thudded faster. Ethan opened it before she could knock. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, time seemed to pause. He looked genuinely surprised and maybe a little nervous. Emily, he said softly, you didn't say you were coming with Ryan? Outside, she replied quietly. He doesn't know we've met before. I thought it might be better that way. Ethan nodded, stepping aside. Come in. Inside the house looked different, cleaner, organized, as if he'd prepared for company. The same light filled the studio, the smell of paint still warm in the air. I finished that piece, he said. Pointing to a canvas near the window, it was breathtaking, a soft landscape of a lake surrounded by trees, with a figure standing at the edge of the water. Emily moved closer and noticed something that made her chest tighten. The figure looked like her. She turned to him slowly. Is that supposed to be me? He didn't deny it. You inspired it, he said quietly. That day you painted here, I saw something in you, a quiet strength. I wanted to capture that. Emily's breath caught. No one had said something like that to her in years. You shouldn't have, she said softly, though her voice trembled. Maybe, he replied, but I don't regret it. She looked away, trying to steady her thoughts. Ryan's outside, she whispered. He trusts both of us. I don't want to do anything that Ethan interrupted gently. Emily, I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you again. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. There was no hidden agenda, just quiet admiration, something that felt both comforting and dangerous. She took a deep breath. You've helped me remember who I was, she said. But this whatever it is can't go anywhere? Ah, I know, he said, a sad smile touching his lips. You love him. I can see that. But you've forgotten how to love yourself. His words hit deeper than she expected. She looked at the painting again, the calm reflection on the water mirroring her turmoil. Before she could speak, her phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Everything okay in there? She typed back quickly. Yes, almost done. Then she turned to Ethan. I should go. He nodded, but before she left, he handed her a small folded piece of paper. Just a sketch, he said softly. Nothing more. She took it, tucked it into her purse, and walked to the door. When she stepped outside, the air felt heavier. Ryan was still in the car, scrolling through his phone. Did he say hi? He asked casually. Yes, she replied, forcing a calm tone. He showed me his new work. It's beautiful. Ryan smiled faintly. Good for him. Let's go grab dinner. As they drove away, Emily glanced back once at Ethan's house. The light in his window glowed softly against the dusk, like a quiet secret she wasn't ready to share. At the restaurant, Ryan talked about work, about his plans for the holidays, about everything except them. Emily listened, nodding, smiling in all the right places. But her mind was far away, replaying every word Ethan had said. Later that night, when she returned home, she unfolded the paper Ethan had given her. It was a sketch, simple, elegant, and emotional. It showed two figures standing apart, facing the same horizon. At the bottom, he had written just one line. Some connections don't ask for forever, they just remind you to feel again. Tears filled her eyes. Not out of guilt, but out of recognition. She wasn't falling in love with Ethan, she was remembering the part of herself she had left behind. When Ryan walked into the room, she quickly wiped her eyes. You okay? He asked, concerned. Just tired, she said softly. It's been a long day. He nodded and kissed her forehead before turning off the light. As he drifted to sleep, Emily lay awake. Staring at the ceiling, she knew she had to make a choice to either keep living safely in routine or open up to the truth that her heart needed more than just stability. Outside, the night was quiet. Somewhere, she imagined Ethan still painting, maybe finishing another canvas under the dim light. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing for sure. Her life had quietly shifted course, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The next few days were heavy with silence. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the sketch Ethan gave her. It sat folded in her nightstand drawer, hidden but never forgotten. Every time she saw Ryan leaving early or coming home late, she wondered if he even noticed how distant they had become. On Friday evening, Ryan mentioned that Ethan had invited them both to a small art exhibit he was hosting downtown. "He asked about you," Ryan said casually. "Thought you'd like to come along. You two seemed to get along last time." Emily's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. "Sure," she replied after a pause. "That sounds nice." When they arrived at the gallery, the room glowed softly under warm lights. Canvases lined the walls, each painting rich with emotion. Ethan was surrounded by people, but when he saw Emily and Ryan, his eyes lingered just a second too long. "Ryan," he greeted warmly, shaking his hand. Then he looked at Emily, his expression softer. "I'm glad you both came." Ryan glanced at one of the paintings. "These are incredible," he said. "You've really come a long way." Ethan smiled politely. "Thanks. It's been a journey." Emily moved slowly through the room, studying the paintings. Each one told a story of loss, rediscovery, and quiet hope. Then she saw it, the lake painting, the one she'd seen before, now titled Reflection of Grace. Her chest tightened as she read the small note beside it. "To those who remind us to see ourselves again." Ryan noticed her staring. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Ethan told me it's one of his favorites." Emily nodded silently, her throat dry. Ethan approached them then, standing just a step away. "That one means a lot to me," he said softly. "It's about rediscovering something you thought was gone." Ryan smiled, not catching the deeper meaning. "Well, you definitely captured that." He turned to grab a drink, leaving Ethan and Emily alone for a brief moment. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. The noise of the gallery faded around them, and for a few seconds, felt like time stood still again. "You made it," Ethan said quietly. "I had to," she whispered. "Your work. It's beautiful." "Thank you," he said, voice low. "You inspired more of it than you know." Before she could respond, Ryan returned. "We should head out soon," he said cheerfully. "Big day tomorrow." Ethan nodded politely. "Of course. Thank you both for coming." They exchanged quick goodbyes. But as Emily turned to leave, Ethan's eyes held hers one last time, not pleading, not expecting, just understanding. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Ryan had fallen asleep immediately, but her mind replayed every moment. The painting, the words, the look in Ethan's eyes. She realized something painful yet freeing. She didn't want Ethan. What she wanted was to feel seen again. To feel that spark of being alive, of being herself. She quietly slipped out of bed and went to the living room. There, in the dim light, she pulled out the sketch Ethan had given her. The two figures stood apart, facing the same horizon. It was symbolic they were never meant to cross paths beyond this. They were mirrors, helping each other see more clearly. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she smiled through them. For the first time in a long while, she knew what she had to do. The next morning, over breakfast, Emily finally spoke. "Ryan," she said softly, "do you ever feel like we've been living next to each other instead of with each other?" He looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued, "we talk, we share a home, but we've stopped really seeing each other. You have your work, and I've been trying to find where I fit in that space." Ryan sighed. "I know I've been distant," he admitted. "Work's been insane, and I guess I thought things were fine because you never complained." "I didn't know how," she said gently. "But lately I've realized that fine isn't enough." He leaned back, thinking, "You sound like you've already made a decision." Emily shook her head. "No, I just want us to try differently. To talk, to listen, to be present again." For a long time, he was silent. Then he reached across the table, taking her hand. "Maybe I needed to hear that," he said quietly. "I don't want to lose what we have, Emily." She smiled softly. "Then let's start by finding it again." Over the following weeks, something changed between them. Ryan began coming home earlier. They took evening walks together, talked about things that mattered, and laughed about small things they'd forgotten. One afternoon, Emily visited the art gallery again, this time alone. She wanted closure, not connection. The lake painting was gone, sold to a collector. She smiled at the thought, somehow proud. Ethan wasn't there, but a new display had gone up, a smaller collection of pencil sketches titled Echoes of Stillness. One caught her eye, a simple drawing of a woman looking at her own reflection in water. Below it, in faint letters, were the words, "For those who choose peace." Emily felt a quiet warmth in her chest. She knew it was his way of saying goodbye. She left the gallery and stood outside for a while, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it felt real again. She had found her balance, not in someone else, but within herself. When she got home, Ryan was in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up and smiled. "You're early," he said. "So are you," she teased. Setting down her bag, they ate together, laughing about his poor attempt at cooking pasta. The house felt lighter, warmer. Later, as they sat on the couch watching an old movie, Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. Weeks later, as spring bloomed across the city, Emily opened her sketchbook again. She began to draw small things, quiet scenes, nothing fancy, just moments that made her feel alive. Ryan often joined her at the table, working beside her, asking questions about her art. They had rediscovered not just love, but friendship, the kind that had been buried under years of silence. And sometimes, when she looked out the window at the setting sun, she thought of Ethan, not with longing, but with gratitude. He had walked into her life like a passing season, reminding her that beauty can exist even in quiet pain. She never saw him again, but she didn't need to. Some connections weren't meant to last forever. They were simply meant to awaken something inside you, a spark, a truth, a memory of who you are. Emily turned the page in her sketchbook and began drawing a calm lake under a golden sky. In the reflection, she drew herself standing tall, smiling, and free.